Hi, I'm Joe Versace, and I'm the board chair of Westbeth. I've lived in the West Village for about 20 years, but have known Westbeth for quite a long time, and quite frankly, in the 80s and 90s, had my fair share of FOMO about what was going on here.
I'm Salpeter, the president and CEO of Westbeth, and Open House New York marks my 1-year anniversary of Joe convincing me to come on board along with the rest of the board, and I couldn't be more excited to be standing here looking south at Palazzo Ciuppi and Richard Meyer's other towers.
When I was asked a few years ago if I would join the board, I jumped at the chance. I mean, sitting here today on the roof of Westbeth, looking south and taking in everything that's here, it's really beyond metaphor, the vision that you can have by being at Westbeth.
I've spent my life in service to arts. Westbeth is a perfect balance for me of serving artists and cultural production, but also serving community. And Westbeth is a place in service to artists across the disciplines. Westbeth brings together all of that experience for its next 50 years, and that's really our task, Joe, is to figure out how to solve the problems that Westbeth has created in its success for the next half century. And I think when you want to solve a problem, especially in a place like New York, you ask an artist.
Yeah, exactly, and we talk about that a lot and really try to capture the resiliency, right? If you think about when people moved in here, it was the 70s. They were immediately faced with a fiscal crisis, which almost destroyed the city. A decade later, AIDS, which had a phenomenal impact on this area and the cultural community in general. September 11th, right behind us, the new tower now stands as a symbol of resiliency.
How do we take what makes Westbeth Westbeth and not lose it in, what is now a very different West Village? And you can speak to that as someone who's lived here for so long.
It's unrecognizable in so many ways as we sit in our office and look at photographs of the piers from then, et cetera.
Right.
And yet the people of Westbeth have maintained their integrity of that spirit of making, and also being able to have a safe space to produce art. The notion of thinking about how resilient our artists have been and the art community and how important art is. I always hold so close your mantra of call an artist when you're in trouble.
Keeping art making in a city that is about consumption is essential. Keeping the spirit of makerspace in New York. This complex of buildings was so important when it was Bell Labs and Western Electric. It was about scientific experimentation, the creation of sound waves, the creation of scientific innovation. Is about failure. It's about giving you the space to experiment and fail. And as an artist, you want to experiment and fail and destroy your work and make new work. And that's what our obligation is to create studios and spaces where artists across all disciplines can do that, and also cultural institutions.
To think about the Kaplan Fund and Joan Davidson and Richard Meyer 50 years ago, having that vision to say, we need to create a space for folks like that, and to be able to look at that in this context and say, how do we keep this another 50 years?
Right. So what's the task in front of us? That's what everyone says. What's the future? And we want to build on the past, both of Bell Labs innovation and 50 years of Westbeth, but not get mired in nostalgia. There are amazing artists that were here. There are great artists that are here, but we have to create platforms for artists of the future and artists of today. And we don't even know what some of those platforms are. We don't know what art making of tomorrow is. So we have to listen to the artist. We have to listen to, young artists as well, create a diverse and inclusive place for artists that aren't here yet, and protect the artists who are here, the residents. We want to be in affordable housing and an affordable space for organizations. We want better studios. We want rotational studios. We want communal studios, not just for people who live here, but for people who don't live here. And
to not determine what art is, but just to provide the space for them to express it. And like you're saying, 20 years ago, the notion of digital art, the notion of performance art, etc., couldn't have been conceived of how it's being shown today.
I think we use the word safe in a really meaningful way. And when you talk to the resident population here and you talk to artists who have made work here, Westbeth stands as a sanctuary in a city that can be harsh, in a world that can be harsh. And that resiliency we talk about is so important to be a safe space, but a safe space to take risks. Because artists know better than anyone else that if you can't take risks, you don't succeed.
And the future that we see and that we share and the board shares and the resident shares is taking that resiliency and putting it in that bottle and getting the
Right.
magic from it, you know,
Right.
and not dictating it, but you know, we have over 600,000 square feet here.
Right.
A lot of art could be made here. So for Open House 2070, we hope that whoever's standing here talking to you is telling you that whatever those guys did back in 2020 was the right thing.